By now, you all probably are familiar with my dismay for Buzz-Off as a character who was introduced during He-Man's second season and who stole the spotlight from an established He-Man ally, specifically Stratos. Now that's bad enough, but what's even more annoying is when a show introduces a character who the heroes or villains are supposedly familiar with, but who's never appeared in an earlier episode and who never appears in a subsequent episode. In this He-Man review video, I'll be taking a look at 3 episodes that feature characters like this, 2 from Season 1 and 1 from Season 2. And let's start with The Return of Evil from Season 1. This episode features a character called Aramish, an electroid from Orko's, dimension. Basically, Orko's hidden a big secret in Castle Grayskull, and Aramish wants to get it. Of course, Skeletor also tries to get in on the action, as the big secret turns out to be the stock yellow ball, a portal to Trolla. Now, this episode has multiple problems, so let's hold off for just a second before I even get to Aramish. This episode at least makes a decent effort in trying to tie the story to the creatures from the Tar Swamp, which explain how Orko came to Eternia. But what the fucking shit is this thing about a ball that lets people travel to Trolla? And if Orko just had this all the time, why have they been making such a big deal about traveling to Trolla in the previous episodes? So here's just one problem. The premise of the episode just makes very little sense. And the fact that the portal is just literally the same yellow ball we've seen in countless He-Man episodes just feels all the more insulting. The fact that Skeletor just jumps in to try to ally with Aramish to get into Grayskull isn't out of character for him, but the way he pussyfoots around the obvious, that is to say, how he doesn't actually know what Orko's big secret is honestly just a little bit silly. Also, there's this moment.
It's the evil Aramish.
You know, I've heard that name before.
No, you fucking haven't. You know that this is when the writers are stretching to make someone important when they're writing dialogue that basically boils down to, oh yeah, I know that guy. That guy's definitely a guy. Man, that guy is very familiar to me. And yes, this isn't the worst example we'll see in these episodes, but let's finally move on to Aramish. Just look at this goofy motherfucker. Orko is terrified out of his mind at the very mention of his name, yet he looks like this. And he talks like, well, a robot.
I am Aramish. I have come for the secret thing.
Jesus Christ, were they not trying at all? Next we have Castle of Heroes. Now this episode isn't actually flat out awful, but it's a central character who really gets on my nerves in this episode. This is Montague. Apparently he and Skeletor are old drinking buddies or something, and Montague's hobbies include collecting the mightiest warriors from across time, featured in this episode, Hannibal and Blackbeard. So at first, Montague and Skeletor end up in a pissing contest over whose warriors are mightier, and then Montague drops the big one and says he intends to add He-Man to his collection. After it becomes evident that He-Man can overcome pretty much anything that Montague can throw at him, he then tries to capture He-Man by himself, with predictably poor results. Now, I just gotta ask, what the hell was the point of introducing this random-ass toady sorcerer, or even why they had to rope Skeletor along for this episode? Because frankly, Skelly doesn't do diddly-dick in this whole episode. In other words, if this episode didn't have Skeletor in the first place, it would just be a dumb episode about a shitty one-off villain trying to capture He-Man and force him to work for them. In other words, this plot was more or less recycled for Pawns the Game Master, which I reviewed not long ago, but which, seriously, was a better episode. Plus, Montague is just a really pathetic dweeb. I think my favorite moment in the whole episode is when Skeletor just flat out tells him at the end that his plan was stupid. You know it was bad when Skeletor is telling you your plan was stupid.
Your idea of capturing He-Man was ridiculous to begin with. Skeletor! Skeletor!
Well, okay, we've seen dumb one-off villains, but what about a dumb one-off hero? For that, we have to jump to the Season 2 episode, Double Trouble, which stars He-Man's longtime friend and ally, Koldar. What, you've never heard of Koldar? That's incredible! Well, no, because this is the only episode he was ever in. The episode actually begins with Evil Lyn and Beastman accidentally discovering a magic mirror which makes evil duplicates of heroes. And this is why Koldar is in the episode, because when Skeletor finds out about it, he decides they need an ally of He-Man's to make an evil double out of, so he can trick He-Man into letting him into Castle Grayskull. Yeah, so what was wrong with using Tila, Duncan, Orko, Stratos, Ram-Man, or Mechanic? No, seriously, for a storyline like this, they could have freely picked anyone from He-Man's regular cast to make an evil doppelganger out of. And instead, they chose to create a friend of He-Man for this one episode only. Seriously! Oh yeah, and remember this bit from The Return of Evil?
It's the evil Aramesh.
You know, I've heard that name before.
Well, it's clear to me that the scriptwriter was trying way too hard to sell that Koldar and He-Man are good friends, because their dialogue is all about what good friends they are.
We must hurry, Shadow Master, if we're to keep our appointment with our old friend He-Man.
He's an ally of He-Man's.
Oh, that's nice.
Koldar, old friend, good to see you.
Oh, and you, He-Man? It's been too long. He-Man helping me out against the Trillions is something I'll never forget.
Jesus. You know, just so we wouldn't even question the fact that this guy is in no other episode? What? Seriously, this episode could have been at least halfway decent if they had chosen to make a doppelganger out of one of He-Man's actual friends. Since the direction and animation work is actually pretty good in this episode. There's even a part where they actually make a good Skeletor and confuse the fuck out of Beastman. Though, even that part is just kind of thrown in there. But instead, we get just a cringeworthy and awful mess, starring some asshole they keep telling us is important, but who just really isn't. Well, that's all from me for now. Next time, I'll be doing my first She-Ra review in over a year, and I can already tell you, it's going to be about my all-time favorite She-Ra episode. But until then, I have the power, so can you.